Stephanie Miller is joined by Glenn Kirschner. Together, the two break down the latest with all the Trump trials and where they go from here. Here's Stephanie.
I'm told there was yelling when you heard the Supreme Court ruling. I'm just going to open this up for you to yell for 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Good morning, Steph. I'm not much of a yeller, but, sometimes when things reach critical mass, you got to yell.
Yeah. I mean, not to blow your MSNBC gig, but this I thought was such an interesting tweet. Matt McDermott said, honest question, why do the networks still have legal analysts who try to analyze the Supreme Court through a legal lens when the court has repeatedly made it clear it is a political body working to benefit Republicans? Ain't that the truth? I mean, every legal expert, including you.
Steph, but right. Here's what I'll say in our defense. We have to let people know how things are supposed to work, how the rule of law actually has worked for a very long time. And then we have to highlight why what the Supreme Court is doing is not normal. They're not showing allegiance to the rule of law or the Constitution. Like people keep screaming at me, Glenn, you see, justice doesn't matter. And I says, you know what? It matters to me. It matters to you. And if we don't fight to get back to it, well, then we're just giving it all over to the bad actors. So we got to keep screaming.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's exactly what they want, is us to be Mark Elias has been out talking about this. That's what they want, is us to be hopeless and despair and not turn out. I mean, but, Joe Walsh, another one I saved for you. Urgency. It was never treated with sufficient urgency. For the first time in American history, a president lost an election and tried to overthrow the election, and nobody treated it with the urgency it required, because what Trump did was so unprecedented. Our entire political and justice system froze, and they all simply waited too damn long to deal with it. You've expressed, and a lot of people obviously expressed, impatience with Merrick Garland for a long time, but it's not just him, is it? I mean, how we got here.
It's many of the institutions of government. And if you just look at what the Supreme Court has done to the American people recently, now, most recently, they just stopped Donald Trump's criminal trial dead in its tracks for trying to overturn the results of the last presidential election. And they gave him sort of a clear runway to try to do it again, because I don't think Judge Chutkan's trial will now be underway or complete by the time the next presidential election rolls around. But Steph, what else did they do? I mean, they take contributions from Republican billionaires. They operate under no rules of ethics. They sit in judgment on cases in which they have actual conflicts. They revoked women's constitutional privacy rights. They have all but decimated the prospect of equal educational opportunity for minorities. They've sanctioned business discrimination of gays and others cloaked in religious piety. This, I am sorry to say, is no longer a legitimate Supreme Court. That is one of the things we now need to scream about, because the rule of law won't save us. The Supreme Court won't save us. They didn't save us in 2020. We saved us. The American people, the voters saved us. And Steph, it's up to us again in 2024. Yeah. And I am confident that we will save us again in 2024. And then maybe we can start to clear house and right the American ship and get the institutions of government up and running again.
I mean, speaking of above the law, I mean, you said you have to wonder if Brett Kavanaugh is concerned about the 4,500 citizen tips about his unsuitability to be a Supreme Court justice that were delivered to Trump but never investigated. Might that be a motivator for Kavanaugh to rule one way or another on Trump's immunity? Well, that's even the least glaring of the conflicts. Clarence Thomas' wife was part of the insurrection that, I mean, this one, by the way, Glenn, we found this old, Sidney Powell interview. She suggests the purpose of the insurrection was to delay the Electoral College certification to give Alito time to intervene on this legal challenge. Powell says they didn't anticipate Pelosi reconvening Congress that day. I mean, Nancy Pelosi may have single-handedly saved our democracy, but I mean, that suggests Alito was in on this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the institutions of government that are equipped to stop, for example, Supreme Court justices by when they violate the law, the financial disclosure laws, and fail to report the donations they're getting from Republican billionaires. It's the Department of Justice that's letting us down. We know that certain Supreme Court justices are corrupt and compromised. We have mechanisms in place to address that. You can investigate, you can indict, you can impeach. None of that's being done by the Department of Justice. So where do we turn, Steph? We turn back to ourselves, the American voters. Unfortunately, we are the only ones on whom we can rely. That's a fact.
Yeah. I love the way you always say it. You said Supreme Court makes consequential announcement is troubling for the health of our democracy, but we the people, I just love you always, WTP. That's us. That's us. Can write the ending by voting in numbers too big to rig and too real to steal. Let's do this. That's the way to say it. It's, and you hate to have to say it that way, but this has to be too big. The margin has to be even bigger than last time because it just... Okay, let's talk quickly. Jack Smith, Andrew Weissman tweeted, Jack Smith requests a July 8th Florida trial on the classified documents case, so he clearly does not think the D.C. January 6th case will be possible then. Where are we with all this? The only thing we know is in New York, election interference hush money cases going forward, right?
Here's where we are. Donald Trump, for the first time, just said, hey, Judge Cannon, we'd like an August 12th trial date. As you mentioned, Jack Smith just requested a July 8th trial date. And Donald Trump, when has Donald Trump said, I'd like to be tried in a federal case before the election? He just said it to Judge Cannon. Please set August 12th. Why? Not because he believes Cannon will force him to go to trial in August, but because I think she can use that as a blocker. In the unlikely event the Supreme Court returns the case promptly to Judge Chutkan, she will now be blocked out of trying the case before the presidential election. I believe that's why Donald Trump, for the first time, has said, I'd like to go to trial in a federal prosecution before the election. Judge Cannon, can you please set August 12th? Wink, wink. You got me? You got me?
Yeah.
And you block out Judge Chutkan? What the hell else is going on there, if not that? Do you really think Donald Trump wants to be tried in an espionage case